Hello, what's up, and welcome back to my channel. My name's Rachel and I make videos on fashion, travel, and environmentalism. So if you like any of those things, you should consider subscribing to me. In this video, I'm going to be breaking down my whole Southeast Asia backpacking trip that I went on, letting you know my route, letting you know places I loved, and letting you know how long I think you should stay in each of those places. Got kind of a comfy vibe going on right now. I've got my laptop out because I plan my trips on my laptop. Let me know in the comments if you're interested in a video on how I plan my trips, because I do it very specifically. This was such a fantastic trip. If you're watching this video and you're considering or debating whether you should backpack Southeast Asia, I highly recommend it. As a solo female traveler, I felt so safe. I was able to navigate things very easily. As long as you go in with a confident and kind and, knowledgeable heart, body, and soul, you will do fine. I feel like if you're watching a video like you're watching mine, you're probably doing some research, so you're already partway there. So what I did for Southeast Asia is what's commonly referred to as the Banana Pancake Trail. So there are a bunch of different countries that can encompass the Banana Pancake Trail. The countries I did were Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Bali, well, Indonesia. Now to start off, a lot of people ask how much time you need. I would say you need at least 3 months to really enjoy this trip and see at least the main highlights of each country that you're in. Obviously, there's going to be places that you enjoy more than others and places you're going to want to spend some more time, but I think at least 3 months. If you have 4, even better, because you can do it at a bit of a slower rate. I was gone for about like 3.5 months, and I found some places I was doing it a little bit quick, and then some places I had a little bit more time. So I started off my trip in Bangkok. I was in Bangkok for 4 days. I found I could have actually done maybe 1 extra day in Bangkok. Now, not because there's a crazy amount of things to do in Bangkok, but only if that's where you're starting your trip. Giving yourself some time to adjust to the time difference, giving yourself some time to adjust to backpacking life, sometimes that needs an extra day. I also found that there were some things that you can just go immediately and do, like the Wat Pho Temple, which is like has the golden Thai Buddha in it, Thai massages, Khao San Road when you're partying. Like, these were all things that you could just do without any prior booking. However, I found if you wanted to do the floating markets, you should look ahead on Get Your Guide. I waited too long and then kind of ran out of time to be able to do this. So something to note about Bangkok. I stayed at Bed Station. I like this hostel. It was a good time. Overall budget for Thailand, I would say you can get a nice hostel probably for about $10 a night, and you can get a meal for probably around $3 or less. And your daily budget should be about $30, I would say. Just in case you're visiting temples, some of them are more expensive than others, and just getting around and putting money into the local economy. It can obviously fluctuate if you're doing things more on a budget or not, but I would say around $30 a day. Okay, so the next place I went was Chiang Mai. I went up north. I had a really good time here. I did a cooking class that was absolutely fantastic. I walked around a lot of like their night markets, because they had a lot of night markets here. I really liked the vibes in the north, and I really liked the hostel that I stayed at. It was called Hidden Garden Hostel. It was definitely like a bougier fit here, but I enjoyed it a lot. Chiang Mai is also where I saw the elephants, so if you're planning on going to an elephant sanctuary, this would be the place to do that. I spent 4 days in Chiang Mai. I thought this was a good amount. Before I go any further, I feel like it's a good idea to mention that I vlogged my whole entire trip, so if you're new to my channel, I will link my Southeast Asia playlist right here. I documented my packing, my unpacking, and my whole entire trip. The journey to get from Bangkok to Chiang Mai was a train. I believe the train was about like 10 hours. A lot of people do this at night. I did it in the daytime because I kind of wanted to like see the countryside. But it's really up to you whether you want to sleep on a train. You can also save a night of accommodations if you do it this way. After I did Chiang Mai, I went even further north up to Pai. Now, I am currently wearing a sweater from Pai. If you haven't noticed already, it says Pai hole on it. I feel the need to stand up and show you. Like, this sweater truly just encompasses Pai. Pai was by far my favorite place in Thailand. However, the journey to get to Pai was rough. It's basically a 3-hour journey to get from Chiang Mai to Pai, and you can do it by bus. However, the bus ride is quite literally, and I mean this quite literally, turns the whole entire way. Like you come out of a turn and you go into another turn. It is like this the whole entire journey. Now, I feel the need to mention I'm a person who has never been car sick ever, and I was so car sick. I don't know if it's because I ate some like potentially dodgy food at a little stand before I got on my bus, or if it's the fact that I was at the back of the bus, which doesn't help. The fact that our driver was just doing like the most crazy turns at such a high speed. But even with the crazy bus journey, I still recommend going to Pai. I highly recommend going to Pai. It was by far my favorite place in Thailand. I met so many amazing people there. I stayed at Nolo Hub and it was a great hostel. Like, I just made so many amazing memories, and there were so many people that I met there who also told me, oh my gosh, Pai is my favorite place ever. And I'm like, I agree, Pai is also my favorite place ever. If you ask any backpacker, I swear they're gonna tell you how much they loved Pai. It is worth the car sickness. On the way back, I popped a gravel like 30 to 40 minutes before I got on my bus, and I was absolutely fine. A little drowsy, but I was fine. So just pop a gravel 30 to 40 minutes before you get in your bus, and you will be absolutely fine, and Pai will be amazing. I spent only 4 short days in Pai, but I wish I spent a week in Pai, like a full week. I could have been so happy. There are so many amazing things to do, like hot springs, waterfalls, sunsets, motorcycling. Like, Pai is such a gem for backpackers. Literally, I feel the need to explain my sweater to people who haven't been to Pai, but they call it the Pai hole because it's like once you go to Pai, you kind of fall down the Pai hole, or you get trapped in the Pai hole, or you get sucked into the Pai hole, so to speak, this metaphorical Pai hole in the sense that you love it so much you never want to leave. So after Pai, my order just straight up does not make sense for Thailand. And I just want to point out that so that you do not follow the same order I did, because it wasn't that smart. But here's the reason I did it. First is, like I mentioned before, I wanted to finish Thailand in 30 days. The second is I wanted to be in Koh Phangan for the full moon party. So I was kind of timing out my city so that I would be in Koh Phangan for that exact date. So that resulted in me kind of doing the islands and Thailand in general in a pretty wonky order. Like, I started in Bangkok, went up to the north, and then went all the way to the islands. A lot of the time what people do is they start in Thailand like I did right in Bangkok, they go up to the north like I did, but then instead of going south and doing the islands in a wonky order, they just pop over to Laos, which is right next to the north of Thailand, and then they do Vietnam, and then they do Cambodia, and then they finish with the islands in Thailand. This has its pros and cons. A con being you have to wait your whole entire trip to experience the amazingness that are the Thailand islands. But a pro is that you're actually doing it in a smart way. You're not having stupid long travel days like I did, and you're not wasting money on transportation by doing things in a weird order. But nonetheless, here's the rest of my Thailand experience. So Krabi, I stayed in Krabi for 4 days. I found 4 days was enough in Krabi. The hostel that I stayed at, I didn't love, so maybe look for different recommendations. Again, I did vlog my whole trip, so if you want to see what hostel I stayed at and things that I got up to day to day, check out the playlist. I found this was enough. I actually went to Relay Beach like for a day trip. I was fine just going for a day, doing some rock climbing. If you're not a rock climber, your muscles are gonna get sore and you probably won't be able to do multiple days of climbing anyway. So, you know, I enjoyed staying in Krabi and then just making a day trip out to Relay, but to each his own. Krabi is like a lot bigger than I thought it was gonna be, and there are so many restaurants, and it's got a real like touristy vibe in Krabi, so I just kind of like got in, saw what I needed to see, got out. Maybe that's a pro for some people who do stay in Relay because it wasn't as touristy. Definitely still touristy, but not as touristy as Krabi was. And then after Krabi, I did Koh Phi Phi. I stayed at the Pier 519. I liked this hostel. It was a good location. Koh Phi Phi is definitely a party island, so there's not a lot of like cultural places that I found in Koh Phi Phi. It kind of felt like a resort, to be honest. Like, Koh Phi Phi felt like a resort. I did a boat trip, I went to see my friends, I had a lot of beach days in Koh Phi Phi, and I just kind of relaxed. For me, I spent about 4 days in Koh Phi Phi, and I found that was enough because I literally I didn't do too much. I just relaxed. Compared to all the fun, enriching cultural experiences I was having in other places in Thailand, Koh Phi Phi was kind of like, not a letdown, but definitely a place to just relax and not do too much. From Koh Phi Phi, I did a trip to Maya Bay. There's lots of like agencies that you can kind of do day trips with and do like party boats with. From Koh Phi Phi to Koh Tao, I took a ferry. A lot in between the islands you can take ferries. I booked all of my transit for my whole entire Asia trip on a website called 12Go Asia, and I found it super, super helpful. Literally never had anything delayed, never had any issues, always got where I needed to be. So I highly recommend 12Go Asia for booking everything Thailand related and everything Southeast Asia related, I should say. From Koh Phi Phi to Koh Tao, I took a ferry. Koh Tao is the place where you get your scuba certifications. I had such a good time in Koh Tao. I always say to people my favorite place in the north was Pai, of course, and my favorite place in the south, if I had to choose, would have been Koh Tao. I found Koh Tao had some like really cool beachy surfer vibes to it, while at the same time, you know, had a lot of scuba diving. In Koh Tao, I stayed at the best hostel I've ever stayed at in my entire life, and that was Savage Hostel. The beds were so comfy. There was a rooftop pool. Just like Pai, I would have spent a week in Koh Tao. And that's for two reasons. The first off is because the vibes were so amazing and great. And the second is because if you want to do your scuba certifications, that takes at least like 3 days. So depending on the scuba course that you're going to take and how long it's going to be, factor that in. Go to Koh Tao. Don't leave it on your list. Even if you're not someone who wants to go scuba diving, there's still lots of things to see. I definitely recommend going scuba diving though. I had so much fun. I was someone who was a bit nervous and anxious about doing it, but once I was there, I had such a good time. Because I was only in Koh Tao for 4 days, I only did my beginner like intro to scuba, so I didn't get my full certification. So another reason why I would have stayed in Koh Tao longer. After Koh Tao, I finished off my Thailand experience in Koh Phangan. I went there for the full moon party. I had a great time. Make sure that you meet people if you're solo traveling and make some friends before the full moon party so you have a good crew to like stay with that you know you're going to be safe for the full moon party. A lot of the hostels only open up for the full moon party and they close when it's not a full moon. So something to note, like there's not too much going on in the island. I did hang out with some friends and do like a waterfall day trip. I obviously had a lot of amazing beach time on this lovely Thai island. Other than that, I wouldn't recommend staying in Koh Phangan for so long. I stayed in Koh Phangan for 5 days because that's just kind of how my journey worked out. However, I only think you need about like 3 days in Koh Phangan. 1 day to get there, get settled, hype yourself up for full moon, 1 day for full moon party, and 1 day to recover from the full moon party, and maybe 1 extra day to do a fun little adventure on the other side of the island. Oh, you know what? The reason I stayed in Koh Phangan for so long was because the hostel I was staying at, it like had a 5-night minimum stay, and I feel like they do that to make money, of course, because they're only open during full moon time. So I was like, oh, well, whatever, I'll just stay for 5 days. Like, there must be something to do if there's a 5-night minimum stay. No, to be honest, I would have just paid my 5-night minimum and still left early. And that's what a lot of backpackers did. They paid their 5-night minimum, but they did not stay for 5 nights. From Koh Phangan, that was my last city in Thailand, like I mentioned. Then I moved on to Laos. Again, that did not make any sense, my order, because I literally started in middle of Thailand. Let me just paint a picture on a map here. Middle of Thailand, went up to the north, went down to the south, and then went back up to go to Laos. Don't be like me. There was a method to my madness. I went up back to Laos and then continued on the trail the normal route because after I wanted to go to Bali, and Bali was south anyway, it made sense in my head at the time, okay? But from here on out, I feel like from Laos onwards, I did my order in a smart way. So from Laos onwards, you can follow my order. I started off in Luang Prabang. That's like one of their big cities. Blankets falling here. Now, I really appreciated that Laos was a bit more rugged, a bit more untouched. Obviously, this is a place that backpackers love to go to, but people in general don't travel to Laos as much as they travel to Thailand. And so it felt a lot more real and less touristy than Thailand, even though that came with, you know, some hostels that might not have been as luxurious as Thailand and some experiences that were a bit more rugged and off the beaten path. I really, really enjoyed it. In Laos, I only spent 1 week total in Laos. I spent 3 days in Luang Prabang, I spent 3 days in Vientiane Vientiane, and I spent 2 days in Vientiane. And I found that was the perfect timeline. Now, something to note, when you get to Laos, I was able to get a visa on the spot. I was able to get a visa on the spot for every single country except for Vietnam, but I'll talk about that more when we get to Vietnam. But essentially in Laos, got there, I didn't have any issues. Luang Prabang was stunning because they have so many beautiful like night markets, Quang Si waterfalls, and then just a lot of like Buddhist temples like you would see in Thailand as well. And that was really fun. Luang Prabang is also a big thing for backpackers too, is to go bowling. Again, check out my vlog if you want to see more of that. From Luang Prabang, it is a 6-hour van ride to Vientiane Vientiane. There's lots of like beautiful viewpoints, there's lots of lagoons. Again, really rugged, like you're doing some questionable things like asking someone on the side of the road to take you to the lagoons and giving them some money and just getting in the back of their car with your friends. Oh gosh, my mom's gonna freak out listening to this. But Laos in general was just a really good time. The only thing I would say is Vientiane, I stayed in for 2 days. It was good for me at the time of my trip because I needed like a buffer day to just chill. At that point, I'd been traveling for over a month. I needed to catch up on laundry. I needed to catch up on sleep. The craziness that was, you know, the rest of Laos. Vientiane is like, there's not too much to see. It's a city and, you know, you can see some museums and like statues, but other than that, there's not too much to do. I highly recommend thinking about this if you are traveling for 3.5 months or more. You are going to need days where you're just going to relax and do absolutely nothing. That's something I didn't quite think about when I was reading a lot of like the blog posts and people's recommendations on how many days you need in each place. They'd be like, oh, you only need 3 days here. Oh, you only need 4 days here. Without thinking about the fact that you are going to need buffer days added in to your journey. So that is my tip to you to think about when you are planning your backpacking trip. After Vientiane, I spent about 2 weeks in Vietnam. Now, Vietnam is the only place that you need to apply and get approved for a visa before you enter the country. This is something that, you know, if you have a general route of when you're going to be entering the country, do it at home before you leave. You have to have it printed off. Some people were able to scramble and do this at the last minute and get their hostels to print it off. It's never really worth the added stress because you're never really sure if your hostel is going to be able to print it off or not. I printed mine off at home. I had it in one of those clear plastic sleeves. It was safe, it was organized, I kept it in a nice spot, and I was ready to go when I got to the Vietnamese airport. They literally will not let you get on a plane unless you have your Vietnamese visa and everything sorted out. So don't try to bypass it. Don't try to do it at the last minute. If you're going to Vietnam, plan ahead. You're definitely going to want to plan ahead because Vietnam is probably, I think I'm going to say it. I think I'm going to say it out loud and let everyone know. Vietnam is probably one of my favorite countries. After doing my backpacking trip in Southeast Asia, I loved Vietnam so much. Specifically, I loved northern Vietnam the most, but it's actually up there in my top countries now. Like, you do not want to miss this. And the reason is, well, first off, I did like a good route in Vietnam. I started in the north and then worked my way down to the south, so it logistically made sense. Spent just over half of my time in Vietnam in Hanoi and doing excursions out of Hanoi. I did 8 days in Hanoi with the 2 excursions, the first one being the Ha Giang Loop. This was the best part of my whole entire backpacking trip. Do not skip this. So many people you talk to will also tell you it was the best part of their whole entire backpacking trip. It is a 3-day motorcycle trip in the Vietnamese mountains. You can choose to ride a motorcycle yourself, or you can do what I did and get an easy rider and get a Vietnamese person to drive your motorcycle and you sit on the back and you can just enjoy it, take in the views. So that was the first excursion I did. The second excursion I did was I did a Sapa hike. I had a really good time on my Sapa hike. It was definitely very adventurous, very rugged. If I could do it again, I might have subbed out my Sapa tour if you don't have enough time for Halong Bay. I've heard really good things about Halong Bay. Even though I had a really good time on my Sapa hike, the conversations I've had with people made it seem like they had way more fun on their Halong Bay trip. At the time I was thinking it was a little bit expensive and I was by myself, so maybe if I could do it again, I would find a friend who would want to like split the room with me or something like that. I really liked Hanoi like as a city. Obviously my excursions were based out of Hanoi, but like you drive up to them. But Hanoi itself was such an amazing city. When I think about Vietnam, I think about Hanoi. The hostel I stayed at was Hanoi Buffalo Hostel and it was right in Old Quarter. It had so much character, so many walking streets, but also like people on their motorcycles. It was so busy, it was so fun, it was so vibrant. This is where you can try egg coffee. There's a lot of cathedrals, a lot of street food that you need to try. Like, oh my god, there's just too many to list. Next place I went was Hoi An. I stayed in Hoi An for about 3 days and I thought that was enough. The main thing I wanted to do when I was in Hoi An was to get like a custom tailor-made outfit done, and that was so cool, like an amazing experience. And because the turnaround is so quick, you can get a dress or pants or whatever you get made done in like a day or two. So that's really all you need. Maybe an extra day if you want to like do some more of the night markets, have more like going out nights. Honestly, I was staying at Cheerful Hoi An Hostel and the woman who ran that hostel was just such a sweet woman, and the hostel vibes were like less of a party hostel because I was doing a lot of partying in other places that I was in. So I really enjoyed that Cheerful Hoi An was like chill and relaxing. If you are someone who wants to party every single city you go to, maybe book another night or two so that you have some like recovery days after a night out. But for me, I did not party in Hoi An, and even if I wanted to, I couldn't because I had bronchitis. Now, something that you can do from Hoi An to get to Da Nang, which is the next place I did, is to do the High Van Pass, which you can basically like arrange a motorbike and then have someone take your bags in like a separate car and go at your own speed from Hoi An to Da Nang. That's an option. I didn't do that because it was raining when I was there, but a lot of people did do it on other days that it wasn't raining. So something to think about. Again, comes with risks. Anytime you get on a motorcycle, comes with risks. Be careful. So many people get injured in Southeast Asia because they're driving a motorcycle and they don't know what they're doing. So that is my warning to you. When I was in Da Nang, I only stayed in Da Nang for about 2 days. There wasn't a lot to do in Da Nang. Like, people said, you know, there was a good nightlife. I don't know if it was just the hostel I stayed at. Like, I didn't meet a lot of people who were going out, but the only main thing I did was like the Ba Na Hill and the Golden Bridge. But they were so like touristy that it wasn't even fun. So I didn't have the most fun in Da Nang. Same with Dalat. Like, it was very unmemorable for me. I only stayed in Dalat for like 2 days. That was enough. There wasn't too much going on. And then I went to Ho Chi Minh City. I only stayed in Ho Chi Minh City for about 2 days. There was more going on in Ho Chi Minh City because it's like a big city. I saw the Cu Chi tunnels, the War Remnants Museum. After Vietnam, I went to Cambodia. I spent a week in Cambodia, and just like Laos, it was a little bit more rugged, a little bit more real, a little bit more of a cultural experience, and I had a really good time. Cambodia is really great if you like history and you like architecture. I stayed 2 days in Phnom Penh, I stayed 2 days in Siem Reap, and then I stayed 3 days in Koh Rong, and Koh Rong is like an island. Koh Rong, I would say, was my favorite part of Cambodia. There was just something so cool about Koh Rong. Like, it was such a beautiful island. I always tell my friends Koh Rong is the best beach I've ever been to. There was just so much space that was really like untouched by other people, and you kind of be on your own. Honestly, if I could go back, I would spend more time in Koh Rong, and I might even do like Koh Rong Samaliam, which is like their other island. I think Koh Rong is more of like a party island, and then Koh Rong Samaliam is more like if you want to be a little bit bougie. The last country I did before I came home was Indonesia. I was in Bali mainly, and I did Bali for 2.5 weeks. After doing the whole like main banana pancake countries of like Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia, Bali was definitely like a little bit more expensive. Now Bali in general isn't that expensive, but compared to where I was before, I was like, whoa. All the hostels I stayed at in Bali were fantastic. The way I did it, because I only had about 2.5 weeks before I knew I wanted to go home, I did 4 days in Canggu, I did 4 days in Ubud, I did 3 days in the Gillies, I just did Gili tea, and then I did 3 days in Nusa Penida, and then I did 3 days in Uluwatu. Some places I liked more than others. I liked Canggu. It was very touristy. I did have a traumatic surfing experience that left me with scars both physically and mentally. But besides that, there was a lot of good yoga, there was a lot of good vegan restaurants. I really like eating plant-based food, so it was kind of like a mini paradise for me in that way. Ubud was really nice because Ubud is like the spiritual heart of Bali. So I did like sound healing here. I did obviously the iconic Bali swing. I avoided the monkey sanctuary. Monkeys are kind of wild, guys, okay? Like, be careful around monkeys. Honestly, Ubud is somewhere that I would say I could have stayed for like a day or two longer because I didn't get to do the Mount Batar hike. And so I kind of wish that I did that. A big thing to do is to like hike up there for sunrise. Gili tea, I had a really good time. This was purely just relaxing and beach time. Like, I did snorkeling, I partied, I chilled by the pool, I chilled by the beach. However long you need for that is how long you should stay there. The next thing I did was Nusa Penida. Now, Nusa Penida was nice. I booked like my own private hotel in Nusa Penida, and then I just kind of like met up with friends and did the viewpoints. I found Nusa Penida was a little bit like overrated. I enjoyed going snorkeling there. I enjoyed seeing the viewpoints, but like other than that, there's not too much to do in Nusa Penida, so. And then I finished my trip in Uluwatu. Uluwatu kind of had a little bit more of like a hippie spiritual vibe to it, kind of like Ubud. Again, people here typically spend time doing yoga, going to the beach. That's what I did. You can see the kakak dances, go to temples. I like that. There was like a lot of those cultural experiences there. I only stayed for 3 days. I found that was enough, but I found I was also tired because I was packing up and moving every couple days in Bali, so it was kind of a whirlwind. Here's the thing, I definitely don't think you could have done Bali any like shorter than I did it. So the bare minimum for Bali, if you want to see all the places that I saw, is 2.5 weeks. All right, that was a super chatty video, but I hope it kind of gave you a good planning route for how many days you should spend in each place, what countries you'd be interested in. Comment down below if you're interested to see how I plan my trips. I'm currently in the process of planning my next backpacking trip, which will be in Central America. I'm doing that in the new year, so it's only like a couple months away, so I'm a little bit last minute. Let me know if you want to see my process, how I organize things, how I book things, all of that jazz. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up if it was helpful for you and if you enjoyed watching it, and subscribe to my channel if you like fashion, travel, or environmentalism. That's all for this video, guys. I will see you next week. Bye.
I got so much back, I think I'm never running out, yeah. Bust me down a whip, bitch, I don't do this for no clout, hey. I got so much back, I think I'm never running out, yeah. Bust me down